Welcome to the future.
Who's this clown?
Not clown. Joker.
Avengers!
Assemble.
Nobody tampers with the equipment except Tony Stark.
Good idea.
United, the Avengers are strong.
Hawkeye, hands off.
Fool! Have you forgotten my invincible magnetic power?
Not this time, Magneto.
My mutant brain senses danger.
Something unseen is slowly spreading its poison, edging tempers.
Think carefully before you do this.
You filthy criminals.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You unlock this door with the...
What is up, comic fam? Welcome to episode 211 of Two Fat Guys Pull List. And man, it was a big week. Such a big week. I didn't finish my pull list. I have let our community down. But before we get into that, that's the hook, right? I am Jim, and I am joined by my guest host Blaine from Comic Club Podcast. So everyone welcome him in. He's filling in for Nate as Nate gets situated with somewhere to live. So we're waiting on that, but Blaine has done a great job of subbing in and helping us out and keeping the show going strong. So I'm not flying solo all the time. So Blaine, thank you again for helping us out.
Sure thing. I love it. I love the opportunity to chat about new comics.
Heck yeah. Before we get the show started, we're going to talk about our show sponsor, which is Collected Comics and Games in the DFW area. I always have to pause because I'm like here in, I'm like, wait, I'm not in there anymore. But the DFW area, they have two locations, one in Hearst, one in Fort Worth. They've got a great two shops. Brent and Ron have done a great job of curating an amazing collection of new comics, old comics, back issues, trades, hardcovers, trading cards, action figures, models, D&D, Magic cards, Warhammer, plushies. They got it all. So if you're ever in the area, go check out Collected Comics and Games. Blaine just went there. Yeah, it's a great place to go nerd out and just get some cool stuff. And then if you can't head over there, they have a website called staycollected.com where you can get all that stuff that I just talked about and store exclusives, cover incentives, all kinds of fun stuff, artist incentives. It's really cool. So if you're interested, check them out. We're also on the road to 1,250 subscribers. When we get to that milestone of subs, we're going to be giving away a slab. We're giving away an Uncanny X-Men #1 from 2019 signed by Jim Chung. It's a CGC grade 9.8. And then we will also be giving away at 2,000 subs a Nick Klein sketch variant of Thor #1 from Donny Cates' run signed by Donny Cates. It is a 9.8 CGC grade. So if you're not already subbed, hit that sub button because we do give away slabs at certain sub milestones. We're giving away some other ones as we hit some other goals. But right now we're focusing in on, we're lasering in on 1,250 subscribers. So that's the business. We've got a big week. Before we get to the week, let's talk to chat. John, how are you doing? Joe, how are you? And Jaden, what up? Man, we got all three mods in the chat. That is awesome. All right, let's go ahead and get to it. We're going to kick off the show with Space Ghost, issue number 12 from David Pepos. I loved this book. This one specifically felt very rushed, unfortunately. This is the last issue in the series, and then we're jumping to an annual to kind of wrap up everything. So it sounds like Dynamite gave it the 12 issues, even though we kind of hinted at another story arc. And I think, Dynamite was like, hey, we're doing Captain Planet now, so Space Ghost has got to be over. And that's kind of how this issue felt. So we wrapped up Space Ghost kind of coming back and getting healthier by the help of his two sidekicks, but then he starts kicking some bad guy butt, and then we have this massive hook at the end leading us into the annual, where essentially we've taken our monkey who's been genetically modified, and now this like robotic company is captures it and is trying to brainwash the universe. That's basically where we're going with the annual. I know it sounds very fast, like what I just said was fast, because that's how the book was. I will say the annual, the cover has me very intrigued because we have Space Ghost walking towards the viewer with a ton of ghosts behind him. And I'm kind of like, all right, David, what are you up to? You know what I mean? Like, that kind of sounds cool. So I'm going to pick up the annual when it comes out, but I'm not going to keep my hopes up for it because it just feels rushed. It feels like Dynamite was kind of like, hey, we need to move on. I don't know. Maybe it's the sales. I don't want to speculate, but it kind of feels that way. So overall, I think David has done a decent job of introducing a character that is very old into the new, current continuity of comics and timeline, or of the times, essentially. I think he's done a really good job for it. So maybe whoever picks up Space Ghost next will continue that vibe. Because I don't know if I'd want to read a Space Ghost comic that's just more campy and feels like the cartoon. Though I will say, a Space Ghost Coast to Coast comic, I would totally 100% pick that up if that actually came out. So there's that.
Yeah, I don't have much to comment on this. I had heard that Space Ghost was a cartoon, but I don't even really know what the real iteration of Space Ghost is. My only experience is Coast to Coast, so I'm just so in the dark on what this is.
That's not a bad exposure. I think that's perfectly fine.
This cover is so sick though. Like, it's like, okay, he's actually like a hero. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, the comic does Space Ghost justice for sure. I think does a great job. Before we move on, John, within the super chat goes top 3 was Exquisite Corpses, Battle Beast, One World Under Doom. Surprises were Doctor Strange, Red Hulk, and Gwenpool? ? Lots of other good stuff too. Yeah, you've kind of hit the nail on the head there, John. I'm kind of in the same. I agree. I totally agree. What up, Chris? Joe, has anyone heard who is replacing Daniel Warren Johnson on Transformers yet? Also, who is the creator on the DC Marvel crossover? I haven't heard any of that. Have you?
Haven't heard it. I'm in the chat responding. Who is it? I gotta know.
Who is it? Yeah, let us know. Do some digging for us, mods. We would love it.
I think I heard about that DC Marvel crossover, and yeah, like is that announced, or is that just like
I'm sure if there's like inklings, like if it's starting to get linked, I'm sure they're gonna do something. My question would be if they do another crossover, because when they did their first crossover, movies like superhero movies weren't a thing, or at least they weren't prominent.
Sure.
Right? Are we going to see a DC Marvel movie crossover? Do you think they'd do it? You don't think so?
No chance. Absolutely not.
With Gunn over at Warner Brothers, you don't think so?
No, I don't think there's any chance. I don't think so. I find it a little strange because, and again, like, no, I'm not trying to, no critiques or anything like that, but like, I've never read the DC Marvel crossover, and something about it just always feels weird to me. Like, it just doesn't really interest me a lot. Like, I'm not big on. Again, there's this whole thing, I guess, like, that's just like, who would win a fight? Hulk versus Thor. Who's the faster? Superman or Flash? Who would win? Like, Wolverine or whoever. I'm just like, I don't really know, and I don't really care. Like, that, to me, that's never been what's cool about comics to me. And so this whole Marvel versus DC, like, let's cross them over and have Daredevil and Batman like fight or meet each other. I don't know why. It just seems it's almost like just a bridge too far. It's just weird to me. I don't know how to explain it. It's just like you're blending the universes. I'm sure they do it in some crazy multiversal way that could maybe make me interested, but I don't know. It doesn't really interest me.
I just remember when it got announced, it was like mid to late 90s, I think, and it was when like the crash was happening within the comic book industry, so it was just kind of this like big hype train, right? But I always remember not necessarily the verses. I remember the comics where they melded two heroes
Amalgam
together. Yeah, that was sick. I do remember that, like a Batman Wolverine. I'm like, hell yeah, that's awesome.
Right.
Superman Captain America. I'm like, this is dope. Maybe they'll do that again too. I don't know. But Joe coming in says it's happening. The two heads of Marvel and DC met at a comic store and announced it happening at the end of the year. They should cross over Absolute and Ultimate, confuse the shit out of everyone. I love that, John. I think that would be great. Joe says he also got the DC Marvel Omnibus, but haven't received it yet. So
And just
Nice.
throwing this out there about, little crossovers in the comic book world. I know Jim Lee just did some art for Geiger, and it was like Jim Lee did art for Image Comics for the first time in like 15 years or something,
Yeah.
or longer. And I was like, that's awesome. You have an OG imager who's now head of, chief creative officer or whatever his title is over at DC. And I love that he's kind of, dipping his toes over there and doing a little image work again, because that's where he started. He started Image.
Yeah, kind of feels like there's this like hint of something big coming within the comic book industry. Maybe there's a rejuvenation happening, and now we've got all these OG creators kind of going back to their roots. So who knows? I think there might be some exciting times coming up within the end of the year into the next. So, all right, let's move on to Exquisite Corpses, issue number 1 from Tiny Onion or Tinyan. Yeah, this is one of my. I'm sorry, there's going to be multiple picks of the week for me, but this is one of my picks of the week, so I'm going to go ahead and hit that button.
That's Jim's pick of the week.
For me, and I don't know how you felt about this, Blaine, but with Tinian, he always seems to impress me in the sense that, there it is. I wish I had my covers were upstairs. I got the Hall of Justice exclusive, which is pretty sick too. The way he writes and the way he communicates with his artist, which it's Michael Walsh, so like, duh, that's gonna just be awesome. I'm always impressed that it just reads like a movie, if that makes sense. It just, his pacing, the way it unfolds, you don't necessarily know where it's going, and then you think it does, and then when the book ends, you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that for that character, right? So this whole book, the way it's being set up for me, felt like a movie, and not in like a corny way. Like, it felt like a real, well-paced first act or first scene of a movie. And I feel like he does that a lot with his books. Like when you're reading Nice House on the Lake, or what's the other one? Department of Truth. I know he's got Something's Killing the Children, which Nate is like super into. And then he's got The Deviant and like a ton of other books. But to me, his writing always unfolds like a very well-paced movie. And I don't know who I would pick as like a cinematographer / director that he mimics. I don't think he does. I think he does his own thing, and it just feels like a really well-paced film. So like, to me, when I was reading this, did it feel long? Yes, it was. I mean, it was a lot. There were a ton of pages. No ad breaks. But every time we got a new character, like I'll say it this way. When I read, when the single mother shows up and she's dropping off the kid with the other couple, right? And she has to go work late or get into work early. For some reason, I was like, oh, I was just clocking that she was the Fox killer. I don't know why. Right? And then you read the book and the Fox killer's introduced, and then you see the panel of all these citizens who are locked in this city and they don't know it. And I'm like, oh, that's what we're doing. And it was like, even though it was pretty plain as day, like how we were setting this up, for me, that's where my brain went. So when it shifted and that scene showed us, we had our killers and we had our people, our innocents, who are going to be kind of almost our main, it feels like our main characters. I immediately was like, oh, I love that. I even actually love that better. Like, I don't know why I put her in a box. I didn't let Tinyan cook. And then when I got to the end, I was like, no, I love that so much more. So the style from Michael Walsh and representing and showing all the killers and connected to these rich families, and like the gun, the hammer, all that. I was like, this just feels almost like a A24 Western. Kind of like you get the movie poster, and they show the, you know what I mean? Like I just visualized it when I read it. And to me, that's what makes a pick of the week. When your brain starts really diving into this world and you start kind of visualizing stuff off the page, it just does it for me. And I think that's why it's my pick of the week. I'm just incredibly intrigued.
Yeah, I mean, this has like the best premise of anything that's come out in so long. It's so sick, and it's playing off of like also a political situation that's interesting, where it's just like, the 1% control everything. And I love how it opens with this conspiracy theorist sort of worker, and he's just like, the government's just all like, it's all a shadow, it's all a deep state or whatever. He's like, the real families control it behind the scenes. And while he doesn't have like the real truthful information, he is right. And he's just like, we're all bugs on the windshield of the rich people playing this game. So you have this real legit commentary playing, and then on top of that, you have this game. And I mean, like we talked about, I think last week, how this was actually like a playable card game, and it feels like a game, almost like a video game or like a board game, in that these killers are so almost cartoonish, almost a little too cartoonish for me, to be perfectly honest. Because like this Rascal Randy and Gamer Kid and stuff like this, they're so highly stylized in a way that I always tend, this is just my preference, to be a little bit more real than goofy and corny and campy. But I think the premise of these 13 families is that I think it's 13 for the 13 original colonies. I think that's how it's set up.
Seems
and
like
they,
yeah.
and they inherited from like the old country, like England, like whenever I think they said 1775, and then they draw the cards, and the card is like the weapon, and the weapons are just like, okay, there's a gun, but then some dude has like the fist. It's like, okay, fist is gonna lose, but this is a video game, so it's like. The fist can win in this game because it's not real. One dude has explosives, right? I think the thing that Tynan does really well is, and he talked about it, so is this not an original idea, but he was talking about how this is kind of like a horror thing. And he says what makes this horrifying is the point of view. And I'm making sure that I'm telling the stories of the people who actually live in the town, because without that, it's just
Murder.
Murderous superheroes murdering each other. You know what I mean? You have to have a human element. You have to have the POV, so who sees the horror happening and sees the this for what it is, like a sick, twisted thing. The designs are super cool. I love that they kind of focused on the lone gunman in this episode or this issue, and it makes me wonder, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is going to be 12 issues. Michael Walsh, I think Tynan is doing like 1 and 2, and then he's doing like maybe a middle issue and then maybe a last issue. And I think Michael Walsh is helping write some as well. And then they're bringing in different writers to help co-write. And I think each issue is going to be kind of focused on a character, if I'm not mistaken. This one was very like lone gunman focused, and it kind of showed like his whole backstory and the person who recruited him and stuff like this. So much world building, and again, this is a lot of comic, and I thought it moved really well. I was really happy like with the pace, and I definitely didn't get bored. And then the games begin, in this, and we already have one player off the board, and then in the end, you kind of have this bracket, right? This 13 player bracket, which I thought was really clever, and it's just. This is the indie marketing event of the year in my mind. I think Tynan and Walsh have just assembled an incredible team to like get this done, and it has. I hear Tynan talk about this a lot, whether it's his newsletter or podcast. He talks about imagery and borrowing from anime, and manga, which he believes is like really like doing really well. Well, it's not an opinion. It's doing really well compared to Western comics, and he's like, how can we borrow from them and what they're doing so well? And he talks about what is the image, what is the key image of a book, and here he's created 13 kind of key images in these characters, and it's like the look and feel of this world. And he talks about like, I want to create iconic characters that people will cosplay as, and they'll show up and they'll be and they'll inhabit, Punchline and Something's Killing the Children, and all these characters that he just creates the look that are so iconic. And here he's done it so many times with a collaborator like Michael Walsh. It's great. I wanted to ask you who are you rooting for in terms of the killers? Maybe not the countries or the colonies, the states, because they're all twisted in their own effed up ways. But I was interested in, like, is there a killer that stood out to you that you liked?
I think, first issue bias aside, and I'll even say first issue cover bias aside, because I think the Fox just looks, I think she looks badass, and
So sick.
she's gonna get killed. Like, she's not gonna win. I just don't. It's almost like this one gone, because it's a very, the way we dealt with a killer in this issue was very Game of Thrones esque. We just set him up, and boom, one's already off the board. I think for me, the dude in the bunny suit, just because I liked his introduction where he's in the
Rascal
car,
Randy.
and he's like, I need my suit, and I'm like, ooh, that's just weird and crazy. And then I think what's the woman on the horse, the twin sister,
Lady Carolina. She's my favorite. I'm a
she's
big
cool.
Lady Carolina girl.
Yeah.
A guy. Her weapon is the arrow. So she's got like a crossbow, and she is actually one of the members of the family. So she's, which kind of doesn't make sense. Like, we need her story to be told, because like I think they set it up as just like, he's like, why would anybody do this? And they're like, well, if you die, the family or whoever you choose gets $1 million or whatever some fee is, and then if you win, you get like exponentially more money.
Right.
But if they already run the country, why would you need money? And why would your family need money? So we're gonna need a little story about her, but her design's sick. I love that she's riding a horse.
And I also like that they hinted, like, in previous matches, like, there's already some history and some bad blood between the families with them. Like, it was kind of like, oh, she's such a bitch kind of thing. I was like, this is dope. Like, the fact that there's already discourse and it's on the field, I think is really cool too. But yeah, I think those are my favorite. John says look up the bunny cover. I'll definitely check it out. I think the other big thing for me, and I guess I just didn't do my research on it. I just knew that this was like you were saying, like this new indie event that everybody's going to want to jump on. The fact that Michael Walsh is on the artwork, and now that he might be actually, that you're saying he's going to be writing a couple issues, there's nobody better to put that in somebody, like from Tynion to him, like to put it in his hands, I think is so cool. And I did pick up the cover C for the trading card, so I'm gonna go get they got like the, not the thin card protectors, but they have ones that have like magnetic cases that you can kind of clamp down.
Yeah,
I'm doing that. I don't care. I'll spend $5 for those. Those cards are
Which
sick.
card did he get?
I got the it's the Hitman. It's the guy with the mask.
He's sick. The lone gunman guy.
The lone gunman.
I really there is a James Stocco Hitman lone gunman cover, and it's real nice.
Yeah. So
I was really I wanted to. I love Jenny Friesen, so I got the Jenny Friesen cover. But I was either going to do that or that Stocco cover, which is I hope, like, I want him to do some more covers because he's so good.
Joe coming in saying Tynion is a great writer. He drags out the story way too long. The Department of Truth is inching from plot to plot that I feel kidnapped writing for a conclusion. Yeah, I mean, we kind of know where this is going, so I don't think we'll be running into that where it's this long, drawn out process. But we'll see.
I think somebody's going to die every issue, so I think the plot will move. And who do you think's going to, like, the fact that you said you think the Fox Killer is going to die quickly surprises me. Who do you think's going to win? Who do you think, what's going to happen?
It's going to be someone, and it's not going to be someone that everyone gravitates towards. I think it's going to be, I don't know, maybe the doctor, the dude with the poison.
I don't like him.
I don't like him either. I know, but I'm just saying, like, it's going to be somebody that nobody gravitates towards. I hope I'm wrong.
So far we got to have the most empathy for the lone gunman because his story is like tragic, and so they've set that up in a way where we're kind of rooting for him right now, at least. So we'll see what happens. So
was there a drop? Like, John, you're saying some of those lone gunman cards have foil, mine doesn't. So I guess they put out some rarity out there as well. That's interesting. That's such perfect marketing, like for the collector, Like, oh, I ripped my bag and I got the regular card. No, I got a foil. That's sick, dude.
Big week for bag ripping.
Yeah, really? Speaking of bag ripping, we got Battle Beast issue number 1. This is also a pick of the week for me, just because, again, I knew I didn't have any backstory to Battle Beast. I didn't read him in Invincible, but I think Robert Kirkman did such a great job of making this feel like you didn't have to. He did a great job. Did you end up reading this or no?
I did not.
Okay. We did get a first page of kind of him phasing out of the Invincible universe, kind of like peace. You know, he beat everybody up and left. But then we get a backstory in present day telling of Battle Beast. You know, he's craving. He just craves battle, right? And he wants to find the strongest person or the strongest opponent to essentially kill him because it's a curse. Like he just has a bloodlust that can't be cured, and he knows he needs someone to kill him. And so that's his deal. So he's just looking for the next opponent, and if they can kill him, great. He wins in that regard. But it doesn't seem like anybody can defeat him. So we get a backstory of him, essentially pulling his planet out of a civil war, and then there's no one else to kill, so he leaves the planet unselfishly, because if he stays, he's going to end up creating more war. And so he goes and fights stronger opponents left and right. I loved the story. I thought the story was great. We ended up getting him. He ends up teaming up with a AI on a on a starship, and convinces the AI to basically find him stronger opponents until he ends up dying. So that's kind of the premise of the book, is we're just moving along through the galaxy, fighting stronger opponent left and right. Loved the story. I think that's great. Ryan Ottley's artwork is so badass. It's so good. And it's I wouldn't say it's grotesque. I mean, he's not, he doesn't play around. You know, he's not, what's the word I'm looking for? Not unapologetic is Ryan Ottley's style. And so when he's allowed to go full bore, on the Hulk, he kind of did it, but obviously it's Marvel, so they couldn't do everything. Here, he can do whatever he wants. So we've got, like, getting punched in the face and eyes just popping out and flying across the screen. We've got Battle Beast eating his opponents after they're dead because he needs sustenance. I mean, just crazy shit. I just liked it. Like, it kind of checked all the boxes for me. It felt, again, much like Exquisite Corpses. It felt kind of like a movie, or I could see this becoming an adaptation on Amazon. You know, doing a Battle Beast spinoff, I would totally be there for it. And I did get I got to the store in time that they still had some bags to open, and I ended up getting the Invincible Marvel crossover with Spider-Man, which I was super stoked for. It's a sick cover. I know Chris picked up like 5 or 6, and he ended up getting all 3 of the rares, including the issue 2 rare, which I'm kind of jealous about because I wanted that one too. But yeah, dude, like this wasn't even on my radar. And then I was checking solicitations before the week started, and I saw that it was coming out, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, I'll pick it up. I mean, I had 14 books this week, but I didn't care. I wanted to do it. I wanted to read it, and I had a really good time with it. It was a independent week. It was just a good week for independent comics. So yeah, I loved it. Let's see here. Trying to get through chat.
A lot of good chat this week.
Yeah, for sure. You guys are live.
Ryan Ottley is, I feel like he's signed with Marvel exclusively or something like that. And I know he did like 20 issues of Spider-Man, did the Hulk, and then I think he took over writing maybe a little bit of Hulk after. I don't know what happened to Hulk, but then, I mean, well, we know that Donny Cates had to
hit by a truck. Yep.
Stopped writing it, but it's interesting that this is the next thing he did, and revisiting, his old universe, and yeah, I'm happy that people are loving it. I'm gonna have to eventually, one of these days, I will do a huge Invincible read, and this will be a part of it.
That's massive. I would love to hear that Comic Club podcast episode of you just diving into Invincible.
So big.
All right, let's keep moving. We got Transformers issue 20. I'll be real quick. This is Megatron. He doesn't have eyes, he has no right arm, and he's still a badass, and he asserts his dominance once again amongst the Decepticons, and shows no mercy. That's all I got. I mean, that's basically this issue in a nutshell. Is he shows up to Earth, he squishes any form of resistance amongst the Decepticons, including what is it, shuttle train, or it's one of these Transformers that can transform into a train or a spaceship, and basically beats the living shit out of him, and then doesn't kill him, finds Starscream, repairs him, and then gets Starscream to use him to kill the train guy, Cosmic Train or whatever the fuck his name is, like blows him to be like disintegrates him essentially, shoots him like 50 times and just goes away. And the issue ends with Megatron saying, let's go get the Autobots. And you're like, holy crap, this is not good. Like, it is about to get heavy. I think Daniel Warren Johnson, even though I guess he's leaving, it sounds like he will be leaving Astro Train. I think he's going to leave the Transformers in pieces when he does. I don't think it's not gonna end happily. I don't think. I think we're gonna see a lot of robots that we are very familiar with, Transformers that we're familiar with, dying very quickly. But I think Daniel Warren Johnson has done a fabulous job of really making Megatron, who in the cartoons you're like, yeah, but he's just a gun. Like, he literally transforms into a gun. Like, he's not a plane, he's not a tank, even though in later iterations he is. So how can he be that scary? And he's done a really good job of making him like very scary as a villain. Like, to the point where I'm like, holy shit, like he's even scarier than the villains in the movies. You know, he's not messing around. So I enjoyed the issue, and it's gonna be sad when Daniel leaves, because I think he's doing a great job.
Yeah. I've heard of Starscream. I've heard of that guy.
Gosh.
Cool. He's a jet, right?
Yeah, he's a jet. And his voice is very like it's irritating almost. It's scratchy. Joe coming in again. It's a comic made for made from action figures, so it's probably Scream, Spear, Who's Next. Transformers was really good. Poor Astro Train. So does Megatron turn into a pistol? I couldn't understand that part. Yes, his original design is literally a gun. And so I think when they made the cartoon in the comics, they were like, well, we're just going with it because that's what the toy is. And I think they did it well, but he would shrink down into a handgun, and Starscream would use him as a weapon. In later iterations, he ends up becoming a tank. So I think that's a little bit more, I wouldn't say acceptable, but it kind of makes more sense when you're around giant planes and trucks and, and not a handgun. But, credit to the guy, the American writers who said, we're sticking to the source material, so he's going to be a gun. So we just shrink him down. I think that's pretty 80s. It's just, that's what we're doing. It's weird, but we're going to do it.
Oh.
Let's see. So Megatron turns into a gun. Who is supposed to hold him? That bird on his shoulder? No, it's Starscream. The bird on his shoulder is a cassette tape from, this is all like Greek to you, is from Soundwave. So Razorbeak, yeah, he's also very cool. All right, let's keep moving on. Nobody knows. All right, jumping over to DC with Absolute Batman issue number 8. Blaine, I want to hear what you thought of this before I get into this.
Okay. Let me refresh my brain with my eyeballs real fast.
Yeah.
I really like. Here's my takeaway. I really like Marcos Martin's art. I love this guy. He's great. I read this book called Friday with Brian K. Vaughan that I really like him on art. I believe he co-founded that Brian K. Vaughan company where they did what is it called? Panel. It's Pay What You Want. It doesn't matter. I really like Marcos Martin, and he does these really cool like layout things that are like absolute zero, and he does like lettering that's like a part of it, like glam, and I love all the background and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting the direction they're going with Absolute Batman's art, because it is done by very, I would say, more on the cartoony side rather than realistic illustrators, and it's very counter to like an Absolute, I guess the latest illustrator on Absolute Wonder Woman that was like very realistic, or very like kind of like I don't know if photorealistic is the word, but more naturalistic, I suppose. Yeah. So you've had Gabriel Hernandez Walta, you have Nick Dragata, and then you have now Marcos Martin. These are artists I absolutely love, and it's really interesting to see them on the book. I think, again, I've talked about it before, where I'm not as crazy about the sort of like more fantasy side of Batman stuff, but this is fine. This is very horrific. I think the colors are really, really strong. This is kind of what I was talking about, where you get these lettering kind of pages like this. I loved that stuff. And let's see, Batman is in the clutches of Mr. Freeze, and then you kind of get this backstory with his little crew there. And I couldn't tell at the very end, this is, do we do spoilers for all of it? I can't remember.
Yeah, go ahead.
They get a call because Killer Croc gets like gassed, and it's like, take him to Arkham. He's perfect for the Bane program. And so I'm like, okay, is Waylon Jones gonna be Bane in this universe? That was kind of my takeaway at the end, and I don't think this got all the way resolved either, right? Like he just escaped, and that's it. So Mr. Freeze is still out there, and I thought it was fine, but I'm kind of like not 100% bought into the Absolute Batman, specifically this book. I like the Absolute universe a lot, but this one is just not hitting with me, and this didn't do anything to change my mind.
And Joe comes in saying Absolute Batman is barely hanging on my pull list. It feels like more like a bootleg Batman than a different perspective on Batman. Yeah. So there's that. But then John comes in and says, I'm digging Absolute Batman. I wanted more horror from the horror artist from what they did with Freeze. I was, because we had talked about how you were kind of turned off a little bit with the kind of the grotesque takes of the villains sometimes. So I was interested to see if what you were thinking, how that played here. I mean, it wasn't as, he wasn't doing as grotesque things. He was just freezing people with really cold water and then they're gone, right?
But he wasn't the monster that we see on the cover. Right. I was worried that he was going to be like a monster. But he's just like a spindly dude. He's just and he's just like a good fighter, or very quick. And then he freezes you with his hands. So I was kind of more okay with that than creating this like Nosferatu looking monster.
Yeah, and I liked that. I thought the unnatural head tilt was I was like, that's cool. It didn't go too crazy, but I think again I liked it. But I'm right there with Joe. It kind of felt, and you kind of hinted at it. It felt unresolved. It was like, hey, we're in this fight with Freeze, and then suddenly, I gotta go, and he just escapes. Mm-hmm. Like he realizes he can't win, and he says it in a one-liner, and then it's immediately over. And I'm like, whoa. Yeah, we were just kind of getting into the good stuff. And maybe it's because he just realized that he couldn't win it, but it kind of felt a little lazy, if I'm being honest. And then jumping into the crew, the crime crew that he's hanging out with, and Killer Croc potentially becoming a Bane, or maybe a fusion of the two. Maybe we get an idea where we get a Killer Croc Bane. Who knows? I am interested for that, but it did feel like there were two different stories going on in this book at once, at the beginning, and then it was like this story, that story, two different issues. So there is, I agree, there was a little bit of just too fast. A little bit too much into the book. I think we could have stayed on the Freeze fight and then kind of maybe hooked into the history with the crew and where they're headed, and will they end up becoming the Rogues Gallery or not remains to be seen. It kind of feels like we're doing that. But
I don't think so. I think they're going to be mostly good guys. I mean, some of them might turn. Well, actually, you know what? I don't know. Like, for some reason, I thought in this world that they were good, and then the rest of the Rogues Gallery are going to be bad. But like the Catwoman didn't, like, we're going to kind of be good for now, at least. Something you were saying, this is a Scott Snyderism too, the thing that he does that you were talking about. They are kind of interrelated, and he does these things where he thematically tells these two different stories, usually from the past and then to the present at the same time, and tries to overlay them on top of each other. So you have the Zoo arc where he's always talking, he uses this thing of like what he learned during like his father's death, and then he always talks about like, well, bats are crazy, and then it's like everything is like, well, bats hang upside down, and then he's hanging upside down or whatever. It's like bats like go, use their ears or whatever it was. I don't know. Right. I can't remember them all. And that was like the arc of that one. And this one was all about basically his crew found out that he was Batman because the Penguin kind of airdropped him onto or Harvey Dent airdropped him onto Black Mass's little boat there. And so now they know he's Batman. He's like, well, if you're Batman, then you need to don't lose or don't die,
Don't
because
die.
they feel like he's got a death wish or something like that. They're just like, you're just doing this and you're gonna eventually die. And that was like the lesson, which is just like, then don't die. And then he just jumps out a window and escapes, rather than, I guess, goes down fighting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it didn't really hit, but that is definitely a Scott Snyderism. He did it a lot too in the Court of Owls, where he related like the history of Gotham. There's like, there was 13 gargoyles, and then that was the gargoyle. And then, he like does that with overlaying the modern times. And you even talking about that kind of like brought that up in my mind, because he's very kind of a classical. I think he thinks about story in a very classical way, where he thinks about arcs, and each issue he tries to like do these like, arcs and then resolve them in really like kind of clear cut ways. And yeah, like I think he's really good. I think he's a really strong writer, but I think the look and direction of Absolute Batman is just really not my cup of tea. But again, Marcos Martin's art and colors are my cup of tea.
No, that was really good.
But not on maybe not on Batman though. I don't know. Like it's weird on Batman. It doesn't fit. And then I saw something in the chat, the Brian Bolland variant, which love Brian Bolland, love that he's doing variants again, or love that he's doing covers again. And I mentioned Nosferatu because that's, I think, where I got Nosferatu. He's straight up like Nosferatu. He's got the long spindly fingers with the fingernails, and then like even like pointed like ears. And so yeah, he was that John was like, I wish it was more horror in that direction. And instead you kind of get, this kind of reminded me of, I don't know if like, there's this character, and Dan Waters did this Batman, where it's like the guy with the 10 fingers, the mini-eyed man, that guy, where he's like doing like backflips and doing flippies and stuff like that. He kind of reminded me of that.
Interesting. Yeah, I am. Maybe the artist would be good. I think they would do really well on Birds of Prey. I think they would kill.
That would be
Birds of
perfect.
Prey.
Yeah, that'd be really good.
Joe comes in and says, writing feels like it's more from a 13-year-old. It's all gimmicky on gimmick. Why would Freeze leave his cast on and turns into a suit? I thought he broke it. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a different take, and we're running with it. Speaking of Batman, I know this is a completely different thing. Are you going to pick up that like manga inspired Batman that's coming out? Like the Batman for like, it's not Batman Forever, but it's like, I know Dan Moore is on the book. I can't remember who's writing it, but it's like a manga inspired 2029 style, not Batman Forever, but in the future Batman story. Have you seen that?
No, find out what it is, because I got to know. Let me know, because sounds interesting.
Chat, let me know. I think you'll probably know before I find it.
Let us know what that is. And real fast, I just wanted to talk about Marcos Martin, because I love this guy, and I was looking just him up, and I know what it was. We did Doctor Strange: The Oath on Comic Club. Go and read that comic, because it is quite good. And I think it's Brian K. Vaughan, if I'm not mistaken. And then he did The Private Eye and Friday, and he founded, what is the company? Panel Syndicate. And so it was kind of like, do you remember whenever Radiohead did like Pay What You Want for our album? Brian K. Vaughan and Marcos Martin started Panel Syndicate, and you can just pay what you want to get like a DRM free download of their comics over there. And they're great. Friday's really good. Private Eye's good. Then they just publish them over at Image Comics too. But it's a cool company. Everybody should go check it out.
That's awesome. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's jump over to Marvel. This is another one of my picks of the week, and it's One World Under Doom, issue number 4. I loved it. What did you? I just wanted to, before we dive into it, was it on your expectation, or did it tip it in one way or the other?
I thought it was just okay.
Okay, all right. Well, and I was wondering that, because I was reading it and it felt like it was going in the direction of like, I think Blaine's gonna love this, and then it shifted, right? And it was, it's Doom, right? Like, he's always got something up his sleeve. But I don't know. I think it pushed the buttons and turned the knobs for people that were looking for the action, right?
Totally.
Right. The past 3 issues have been just this massive setup and showing how Doom just literally is the smartest, and it's not what you expect, or at least we're waiting for that. Just like the Avengers and the X-Men and all the other heroes, what's Doom up to? What's his play? Where's the weak point in his argument? And there just isn't one. play to people's emotions. And now we finally get to the action that everyone's probably been wanting, and like, oh, this book's boring. And so we finally get it. RB Silva is great. I'm so glad that he's on this book. I think Ryan North is utilizing him fantastically. I think he's done a great job of just illustrating the ideas from North. I think he's just doing great. I cannot find a fault in it. I love RB Silva because of him being on Hickman's X-Men. I thought he did a great job of, really representing what Hickman was getting out there. So I think North in this combo with Silva is awesome. What I liked about it was seeing Doom doubt himself. I love that we actually got that we had a split second, and even wrote it in there, like for a moment he felt defeated. Like, oh shit, I'm gonna lose.
Yeah, that was surprising.
And like even like that close up on his eye, like you could kind of see like a tear kind of like show up in his eye. Like, ooh, this is cool. Like, didn't really see that one coming. But then of course, this is that moment that I think you kind of talked about. Like, there's always this pivot that happens when whatever they're setting up as this absolute won't necessarily be, because the Avengers always win, Fantastic Four always foils Doom, yada yada yada. Right? And it kind of happened here with Doom in Dormammu. He had something up his sleeve. He was waiting at bated breath and casting a spell the entire time. Like, it's kind of like in Naruto when they're fighting and like, oh, I got him. I threw a fucking knife through his chest and poof, it turns into a log. Like, no, not really. I'm over here. Right? Like that happened here with Doom. Whether you love it or not, that was the mechanic that was used. So there was a part of me that was kind of like, but I still liked it. I thought it, like, the dialogue of Doom, his internal dialogue, I thought was really well written. I don't know. I think it just, not that I was in the camp of like, where's the action? It was a nice breath of kind of moving in an action forward plot for me. I liked it. I don't know. My animalistic side was just like, oh, cool, action. Like I was just, we're casting spells, we're blowing things up. But I will say, like, him talking about how he casted a spell this entire time, or when the Avengers and all the heroes of the Earth got teleported to a dimension and I simultaneously sent Doombots there as well, that did feel a little like, nah, you can't hurt me because I have a force field. Like that, it did feel that way. I can't cover that up. Like it felt very, I ran out of pages, so here's a panel of how I'm explaining how that happened. But go ahead.
Well, just because I kind of disagree with that, because I think it was set up like on page 2, and I'm looking at that. He says, I cast 3 spells. The first protects against Dormammu's attack. The other 2 engage, then all that remains is him. And so you get this setup of there's 2 extra spells that he had cast, and we don't know what they are, and you knew they were kind of coming as you kept reading. So it wasn't a full like, oh, by the way, I actually also cast these other spells. I did this magic trick. It's like and I thought that was a good little setup for the issue, because it was like, it had anticipation. Then it had you be like, okay, well, what else did he do? Because it looks like he's about to straight up lose. What are these other 2 spells? Yeah,
and maybe I read it too fast. But I don't know. It still kind of felt that way too, though. Like I felt, I didn't watch a ton of Naruto, but when that would happen, I'm like, that's kind of a cop out. You know what I mean? Like, let's have some finality to it. Because I did like, Dormammu breaking his hand and his foot, and you're like, God,
anytime. Yeah, that was pretty dark. Yeah, that was intense.
Yeah. And I also liked when Dormammu was winning, his flames went blue instead of red. Like he was getting hotter. I was like, ooh, this is sick. Like I love that imagery. What I'll be interested to see is in issue 5, like how the heroes react, right? Because they're coming. The world's heroes are coming to defend against Dormammu. They always do. That's how Doom even says it. He's like, it's built in their DNA. They can't help themselves. They have to defend, even if they know, they choose Doom, even if they know they're going to lose. So it'll be interesting to see where that issue goes, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, we're going to get, Action 2.0, and I feel like it's going to be resolved in like, let's say 4 pages, and then it'll be like back to one world under Doom. Ha ha ha. You don't know what I'm doing. You can't defeat me.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm okay with. You know, I'm not upset about that. But overall, I liked it. I thought the dialogue, the internal dialogue of Doom, Dormammu being surprised that he thought he was being underestimated, you know, like he was weaker. You know, I liked that too. I thought that was fun. I don't know. I enjoyed it. I felt like it was the perfect timing for some action.
Totally.
So,
yeah. I love one. I wanted to call attention to the opening page, which is like the recap page. Yep. I love that they do those in-world recap pages that are like, here's the stocks, you know, here's how to talk to your friends and family about our new ruler. You know, everybody's not on the same political divide, so here's some 5 tips on how to discuss Doom with them. I love that.
Right.
That stuff's so funny. I read all those things. I think they're great. And then when I got this page, which is like the cast of characters, because usually in these event books, you like have like 30, you know,
right.
a 30 cast, and you're just like, oh boy, here we go. And you just get this too. I was like, oh dang. And I thought the same thing, you know, John said it in the chat. I love this book. It's just a battle between 2 heavy hitters. I was like, that's what this is going to be. And that's what we got. And, you know, I don't know Dormammu all that well, but I was like, look at this cover and he's absolutely gigantic. And I always thought he was like huge and like, you know, living in the cosmos, and him just coming down to Earth size. That's an interesting choice. Is that, I don't know why he did that. Maybe stay big, dog, and just smash him. I don't know. Not that big of a deal because listen, it's comics. I'm not gonna be super picky about stuff. I love that it was a battle. Dormammu looks awesome, actually. You called out Silva's art because like he looks so cool. I was like, he looks like a great villain. I've never seen him portrayed so well, and the colors. There's so much happening on these pages, like energy and demons and things flying out and stuff like that. I was also a little confused because like, who sent the Avengers and Fantastic Four and X-Men away? Was that Doom or was that Dormammu? Because that was page 1, and I was like, what? That happened?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't know if it was. I don't know. Like it kind of seems like it was Dormammu because of the way Doom casts the spell with the Doombots to help fight whatever they're fighting in that other dimension. So I feel like it's Dormammu.
Maybe,
but
I think, yeah.
I think why we get the confusion is because it's a green aura or green energy that sends them away, which is associated with Doom.
Yeah, and he's using like green. He's got the green, like, you know, hammer thing and stuff like that. So yeah, totally. So I thought that was interesting. And let me think if there's whenever he pulls out, I knew it. Whenever he's like laser eyes, and he's like, does he do shield? And I was like, and there's one more, and what he says, he's like, the words to prove it. And I was like, I knew in my brain, I was like, snicked. And then I turned the page and I was like, snicked. I was like, perfect. That was great. that was a great, like, you know, Ryan North is just having like a lot of fun with those lines and stuff like that. I thought it went on, like, it was like I've never seen actually Doom admit defeat before, because he's always like, how dare you? I would never. And then here he's like, oh dang, have I lost? Yeah. And that was quite surprising. And then when you get him at the end with like the crutch, he's got his like green crutch and he's just like hobbling towards like Dormammu. I was like, that was just like a really good image. And this is just, you know, this is like an experiment. I was thinking about this because it's weird to talk about event comics in single issue form, because I almost think of them as more like a movie, whereas like your regular serialized monthlies, you talk about like TV shows. We're like, was this issue good? Was it better than last issue? But I think of event books as more of a piece. It's more like it's a start and a finish, and it's not as serialized month to month, where it is more of a long story. And so the arcs, I think, work a little bit different, but it's still a serialized medium, so you have to create little mini arcs in each. So for that reason, I think it was just like a fun exercise for North and Silva, just to be like, let's do a no holds bar, you know, knockout brawler between two of like, you know, these huge cosmic villains, and have them battle each other, and that's it. And a lot of internal dialogue. They're talking to each other a lot, and then it moves the plot just like an inch forward. But again, I think the image of him with the little green crutch was fun. So I'm in. Like did not dislike it, but wasn't like blown away at the same time. It's fun, but it's hard to talk about these event books on like a monthly basis.
Totally. Holden, how are you doing? Glad you could join us. Also, I don't know if people saw, so I know Robert Downey Jr. posted a picture of him going like research reading materials, and he literally posted this, and I'm like, oh, have you read this, Blaine?
I have. And I need to reread it. I was talking last week. I have it literally sitting right over there because I just read Hickman's full Fantastic Four, and I need to reread because I had read that actually before I read his Fantastic Four. So now I need to read that for the real capper, end cap.
It's so good, and I'm sure the single issue that came out is like flying in value right now, which you know, at the end of the day, it probably won't end up being. I bet they're just playing around, but if it is the case, that story is fantastic. What did Joe said?
That's
I also
far
appreciate
in the future, right? Like that was like
Galactus essentially kills everyone, and Doom escapes, and him and Valeria concoct a plan to defeat him, and then I think she kills herself in that book too. Like
I don't know if I mean maybe they might show like they might use inspiration, but I can't imagine that's gonna
I think the idea of Galactus ending a reality and then Doom being the one to have to save the 616 would be kind of crazy. But that's just me spitballing. John, I also appreciate that that line that I haven't come to bargain. Yeah, that was cool too. Like it was written really well. It was fun. All right, so that's basically the end of the show because I didn't read Ultimate Black Panther, I didn't read Ultimate X-Men, and I didn't read Uncanny X-Men. Why? Because my wife's parents, my in-laws, moved up to Colorado, and so they're here, and we've been helping them move into their new house. So I didn't get to those books. So maybe I will do a post on our Instagram and Facebook page or TikTok, kind of doing a spitball quick review of how I like them or didn't. I'm sure I'll love them because I love all three of those books. So Holden, I know you just showed up, but that's the end of the show. Sorry, guys. I wish I just didn't have time. There were so many books, but man, I had 3 picks of the week. So, Blaine, if you had to pick one, what's your pick of the week?
Exquisite Corpses.
Exquisite Corpses. All right, perfect.
Yeah.
So, thanks, guys, for watching our live episode 211. As always, we'll have a new comic book day video this Tuesday around about 4:30 Central Standard Time. That will drop, and next week is itty bitty. It's a small week, but there are some cool books, so I'm excited for that, and we will get that to you here on Tuesday. So Holden, again, I'm sorry, I know you just jumped in. Usually we go for like an hour 45, but we're done here. But anyways, we'll catch you guys again on Tuesday, and then again here live this Sunday, where we'll talk about those books and maybe some speculation. I don't know, we'll see what happens throughout the week. Maybe I'll go see what's it called? Thunderbolts. Yeah, still haven't seen it yet. So we'll see. As always, comic fam, be kind to one another and read more comics. We'll catch you guys later. Bye.
Bye.